Good.
And we are back with our third top eight set of the Mount Silver Circuit Last Chance qualifiers. My name is Adi, and I'm joined by Owen Wright.
Hello. And today we're going to see another fun match between two players running different teams. We're going to see Garchompro with his Kyogre Lunala. This time a Lopunny, a Crobat, a Tapu Koko, and a Celesteela against Mike D'Angelo's Xerneas, Rayquaza, Incineroar, Tapu Fini, Celesteela, and Tapu.
Yeah, and so we saw Garchompro play a little earlier today and managed to win his win in Mike's team at all. But it looks like a really interesting composition of the X-Ray core. In particular, I'm excited to see these two Celesteela, where they both the opposing teams, and most likely will have to rely on the Tapu Kokos.
Yeah, and that definitely poses an interesting question of, although the Celesteela does wall a lot of the opposing teams, is it worth bringing the Celesteela with the threat of that tap? I think definitely on Garchompro's side, he does have the Kyogre and the Lunala with the Tapu Koko, which although they cannot one-shot the Celesteela there, Menacing Moonraze Maelstrom, as well as just Water Spout, if not wide guarded, do a lot of damage. So that in combination with other things could pick it up. So I definitely think that Mike doesn't really want to bring his Celesteela to this matchup. So Garchompro could say, hey, he can't bring that and bring his own to counter that. And I think that would be a really good adaptation and analysis in team preview.
And we saw Garchompro play against a different X-Ray core without Tapu Koko, and Celesteela was definitely the MVP in that set. So I wouldn't be surprised if he relied on it heavily. But of course, Tapu Koko on Mike's side seems free to fire off thunderbolts, and nothing really resists that. You see him lead off with his Rayquaza and his Tapu Koko, while Garchompro leads off with his own Tapu Koko and Lunala.
This is definitely a kind of interesting lead for Mike D'Angelo here. He doesn't exert as much pressure as you'd like to think he would with a lead like. Definitely depending on the item of Garchompro's Tapu Koko. Do we know what that is right now, or is it still unknown?
If I recall correctly, it was Life Orb, but I might be wrong about that.
We do see Tapu Koko on Mike D'Angelo's side just go for a Twinkle Tackle immediately, KOing Garchompro's Tapu Koko, getting that out of the while Lunala on Garchompro's side gets up a Tailwind. Kyogre comes in for free, and this is definitely not a good spot for Mike D'Angelo.
And so even though he got the KO, he gave Garchompro the free switch into Kyogre, which has threatened so much of his team. And Lunala goes ahead and chunks the Tapu Fini switch in, even though is probably his best switch into the Water Spout.
Yep. And does proc Berry, which is definitely good for later in the game when Tapu Fini does not have any more recovery if he wants to use any it on another switch in or something like that. And here, pretty much the same play from Garchompro would be extremely safe with the Water Spout. Nothing really wants to take that on Mike D'Angelo's side anymore, not even that Fini with the amount of health that is at.
And Rayquaza was his best bet to take it, and he does switch the Rayquaza in. The Moonblast Beam goes into the Tapu Fini, and it barely lives, but it goes down to the Water Spout, and we do see that Rayquaza takes very little from the Water Spout, potentially indicating that it is an Assault Vest variant.
Yep. And we also do need to keep in mind that with the Rayquaza switch, it did get rid of the heavy rains. That also means that Kyogre isn't going to be doing as much damage with the Water Spout. It's still going to be a lot, but it's not going to be as much as it was. So this could be a safer spot for Mike D'Angelo to try to either like double protect and get up a Geo next turn, or just try to live that with like extreme speeding the Kyogre to make sure Xerneas can take a hit and get up his Geomancy.
Right, and just like Garchompro, we see that he doesn't have a ton of answers to Xerneas, and his best answer is probably Celesteela, which you see in the back. Pro, he has to decide when to bring that in and how he's going to deal with Mike's other Pokemon. Essentially, what he's going to prioritize on this turn, because we know that Rayquaza can't protect.
I think we do see the Celesteela switch in here with the Water Spout again doing about 50% to that, or not Kyogre, to the Xerneas. and the Dragon Ascent goes into the Celesteela slot. Very good read from Garchompro. While Xerneas sets up Geomancy. This definitely puts Mike D'Angelo. He has the Geo Xerneas, which is fantastic, but there also is the Celesteela in there, and that threatens it heavily. So this would be a very good time for Mike D'Angelo to get that Tapu Koko in the field so he can threaten that Celesteela K without losing his Xerneas in the process.
The question is, can he get that Tapu Koko in safely?
Yes, I mean, we do see Rayquaza did use Dragon Ascent last turn. So if Mike D'Angelo goes for a Protect Dragon Ascent, the Kyogre play, and Garchompro reads that and goes for the Ice after 2 Dragon Ascents, even though it's in that strong wind, helping those flying type Pokemon with their weaknesses a little bit. You think at -2 special defense, it'll probably die to an Ice Beam, and that could be a really safe play for Mike D'Angelo to get his Tapu Koko in for, but that he does in the process loses Rayquaza.
Right. And we just see the Celesteela go for a Protect. Mike has no intention of protecting his Xerneas, going for a Moonblast, and of course, get revealed, which potentially a Moonblast and Flamethrower could potentially knock out the Celesteela. Meanwhile, Kyogre goes for a Water Spout and puts Xerneas down to about 20% health, and Rayquaza down to about 30% health.
Yes, and now Mike D'Angelo, he is in a decent spot. He can definitely kill Celesteela this turn, but you need to be aware that Water Spout should pick up the KO on Xerneas this turn, even though it is Geomancy. So he has to deal some damage to Kyogre and hope it doesn't go for a single target move like Scald or to pick up that KO while still threatening the Celesteela.
And of course, Celesteela often carries Wide Guard, so if Mike does choose to go for a Dazzling Gleam to try to chip the Kyogre, Celesteela could potentially prevent that. Although instead we see Dazzling Gleam and Flamethrower does not pick up the KO.
And Heavy Slam takes down the Xerneas. This is really big for Garchompro here. Tapu Koko does come in for free, pretty much being able to freely KO either the Kyogre or the Celesteela. And with the added threat of the Rayquaza, this does look like the set is almost, or not the set, the game is almost.
Tapu Koko, of course, free to spam its electric moves. Pokemon that can likely take that is the Lunala. So he does, in fact, go for the Thunderbolt into Kyogre, and Flamethrower safely picks up the Celesteela despite the +1 special defense boost. And Garchompro brings in his Lunala for his last stand.
Yep. I mean, in the same position here, effectively as he was last turn, Tapu Koko not threatened at all, and Rayquaza, again, not super threatened. Both of them outspeeding almost everything on Garchompro's team. So, I mean, he's free to just go for a Dragon Ascent Thunderbolt and clean up this game right now.
And the question is, does Dragon Ascent pick up Lunala? And we know that Rayquaza is both mixed and assault best. So how much attack investment it actually has.
Kyogre gets the double protect, though.
We see Mike go for the read and correctly call the double protect and double into the Lunala slot, guaranteeing that he picks up that KO.
And with that, Kyogre goes down to a Thunder. And Mike D'Angelo takes game 1 of the set against Garchompro.
Yeah, that was a really well played game from both players, and Mike ended up positioning himself really well for that end game. Let's see how Garchompro and Mike adjust to game 2.
I mean, I definitely like to see Garchompro go for some kind of Crobat lead here. Definitely the Tailwind that Mike D'Angelo had up. Or not, no, it was Garchompro who led with the Crobat. And the Tailwind was really good in the beginning of the game, but losing that Crobat early prevented him from having it at the end of the game. So it was the kind of thing that it was helpful to a point, but without that Tailwind, he wasn't able to really do much. So if he can keep that Tailwind up the entirety of the game, he should definitely be in a much better position.
Yeah, and another thing is that it looks like Mike is really relying on Flamethrower to Steela, and if he doesn't have, say, if Heavy Rain is up rather than the stream, then Garchompro might be more equipped to deal with a Xerneas and a Rayquaza combination. So Garchompro managed to get Water Spouts off and pick up KOs with Kyogre, but brought in Kyogre earlier rather than later. It meant that his Celesteela was vulnerable. That might be another way that he can adjust.
Yeah, I would love to see, even if they lead similar things, I'd like to see the Celesteal preserved for a bit later when the Rayquaza cannot threaten it as much. Maybe being able to pick up on the Xerneas or Tapu Koko or something before the Rayquaza can get off a flamethrower onto it, either with a combination of Fake Out from Lapa or just being in Tailwind, being Icy Winded, something like that. And we see the Tapu Koko Lunala lead from Garchompro, just like last game, but the Tapu Koko Tapu Fini lead from Mike D'Angelo, which means that Misty Terrain will be up as Mike D'Angelo's Tapu Fini is slower than both of the Tapu Koko.
Right. And last game we saw Mike go for a Twinkle Tackle turn 1 into the Tapu Koko, and usually speed unless they're Assault Vest, and I imagine that an Assault Vest Tapu Koko, definitely not an Assault Vest Tapu Koko given Revealing Protect. Exact same play. Garchompro reading that, protecting his Tapu Koko and setting up Tailwind, while Tapu Fini sets up Light Screen to mitigate all the special damage that Garchompro wants to throw out at him.
This is definitely a really good adaptation from Mike D'Angelo, even though he was like in a really good spot after winning game 1. Leading that Tapu Fini, getting up that light screen, definitely puts him in a much stronger position in the beginning of the game, so he can clean up the end game like he did last. But you also have to think about the fact that in this exchange, Mike D'Angelo did lose his Z, and Garchompro's Tapu Koko is still alive, being able to exert pressure from that, maybe even its own Z move, and we'll wait to see what happens there this turn.
Right. It's worth noting that almost all of Garchompro's heavy hitters are special attackers, and Lopunny has not been brought to any of these games. So I'm interested to see how Garchompro adapts, whether or not he tries to stall out this light screen, do damage through this light screen, and put pressure despite that.
We see the Volt Switch directly onto that Tapu Fini, doing roughly 30-35%, which is decent damage through light screen, but it's not enough to pick up the KO on either. Moongeist Beam also not killing the Tapu, this time doing like 60%, but the Volt Switch comes out onto Kyogre, and Rayquaza comes in pretty much for free.
And unfortunately for Mike, the Tapu Fini misses the Nature's Madness onto Lunala, which would make Lunala very vulnerable. As you said, Rayquaza is now in very safely, and Mike is the one who controls the weather.
Yep. I mean, we're going to see that, I'm assuming, the Megadus, maybe even just straight into an attack on that Kyogre, realizing that once the Kyogre's out of the way, with Tapu Koko and the Flamethrower on the Rayquaza, he can easily deal with the Celesteela if that's what's... And we do see the Celesteela come in this turn. Protect on Lunala, trying to mitigate damage from that, as Dragon Ascent goes into the Celesteela.
And Lunala avoids the Nature's Madness thanks to his Protect, and Garchompro maneuvers around the Dragon's Descent by switching into Celesteela, taking very little damage that turn, and potentially stall up the light screen a couple turns from now, just because Celesteela is really not threatened by anything on the field with the Kyogre in the back.
And you also have to see that Garchompro, with the Celesteela, is able to start hitting things with Heavy Slam. It's in Tailwind, which means it will outspeed that Tapu Fini if it chooses to target that slot. So a combination of like Moongeist Beam and Heavy Slam could be able to KO the Tapu Fini this turn, which would be very big for Garchompro.
Right, and Mike really wants his Tapu Koko on the field to pressure the Celesteela. That's his best bet to do damage to it, but Slam, because Tapu Koko is such a light Pokemon, Heavy Slam will do a lot of damage to it, and Lunala threatens it as well.
Yep, I mean, it's already at 30-35% here. So even if it's like a small amount of damage from like the Moongeist Beam through Light Screen, which we saw did like 60%, it's not going to be sitting pretty. Rayquaza goes for the Flamethrower into Celesteela, but and gets the burn, which could be very but Lunala does get off the Z move into the Rayquaza slot through Light Screen, not KOing, but doing a large amount of damage.
Right, and so Celesteela gets Leech Seed off, very content to sit, and doesn't really feel threatened. The burn might change thanks to the situation. However, Leech Seed will continue to recover health, and
yes, but then also Tailwind goes down that turn. which means Rayquaza is now again the fastest thing on the. It has been leech seeded, and Celesteela isn't going to die to a flamethrower at this percent. But Rayquaza is probably able to Dragon Ascent this Lunala and get a lot of damage out, preventing another Tailwind, which would be very, very devastating for Garchompro if that does.
Right. And we still don't know the last Pokemon that Mike has in his party. It could be the Incineroar to threaten the Celesteela. It could be the Xerneas to try to potentially sweep. Now that Celesteela is
I mean, from experience, I've seen +2 Moonblast from Xerneas be doing a good amount of damage. Not enough to pick up the 1 KO, or sometimes even the 2 KO. But with the burn damage, and the Scald going in from the Tapu Fini, that should be enough with +2 Moonblast to pick up the KO.
Right, and so we do see Heavy Slam doesn't pick up the KO on Rayquaza. Rayquaza is a relatively heavy Pokemon. And while Leech Seed does finish it off, it means that Celesteela does not get the special defense boost that might make it slightly better. Yes.
Yep. Lunala did not die at that turn, however. And this could be a problem. If Xerneas just goes for a Moonblast into Lunala, preventing the Tailwind to come up, that means Celesteela can get off a Leech Seed or a Heavy Slam. If Xerneas just goes for the Geomancy, this also means that Lunala could get up a Tailwind for free. It's a very 50-50 based spot that they're in right now. They need to decide what's more important to them and call Protect or switches like that correct.
Right, and it's also worth noting that Tapu Fini Light Screen just ended, is in the position to reset that as well if it wants to.
So we see the Xerneas Protect as Lunala goes for Tailwind, Tapu Fini goes for Light Screen, and Leech Seed comes out. Very special, or not special, status heavy turn. But I do definitely think that even though the Light Screen did come up protecting that Xerneas, Garchompro did get the longer end of the stick here, and Moongeist Beam go into the Xerneas before it does get up that Geo.
Right, and however, now Xerneas is the fastest thing on the field after that Icy Wind. And how much damage is going to do to Celesteela? But we think that Celesteela can. It's going to be very close whether or not it can live in the blast range.
It definitely depends on how the Celesteela is trained. I've seen it KO from this range. I've seen it live with good amounts of health. It really depends on the spreads on both the Xerneas and the Celesteela. I'm interested to see how much. I'm assuming Moonblast would do, or just like a D-Gleam and Skull could be enough, threatening the Lunala KO as well. If Garchompro does read the D-Gleam and goes for a Wide Guard, that would be pretty bad, allowing Lunala to get some more damage out on the field, which would be very.
Yeah, so both players taking their time thinking through this crucial turn, trying to decide how they want to position their board for the end game. His Tapu Fini into his Tapu Koko, and going for a Moonblast, which does not KO the Celesteela, whereas Garchompro goes for a Moongust Beam and picks up Koko and Leech Seeding to cover the potential no effect.
Yes. And we do see the leftovers and the Leech Seed giving it a good amount of health coming back to it. Although it is burned, means Celesteela is definitely not as good of a situation as it would like to be. This would be a very good turn for Garchompro to just protect Celesteela, try to get some more health back. But if Mike D'Angelo, he calls that Protect and just hits Lunala with a Moon, that definitely puts this game into very dangerous territory.
Right, and we also saw that Scald earlier in the game did a little around 20% less than what Celesteela is at right now. So there's a decent chance that if Mike chooses to Scald, it will live an attack.
We see the Wide Guard come out, not from the Celesteela, but from the Lunala. Definitely not what we expected. But here, this is a very interesting spot because Celesteela does get off the heavy into the Xerneas, and with no Tapu Koko to switch in as it took that Moongeist Beam in the turn before, Xerneas just kind of gets to sit here and await its demise as it's leech seeded. There's nowhere, and with the double protect or just switch, he can just stall out this leech seed and Xerneas will go down.
Right. And also this is the last turn of light screen, and so will be very vulnerable. Tapu Koko will be able to knock out Fini after this turn.
Okay, we see the Dazzling Gleam uh, and the Scald onto the Tapu Koko, but it doesn't matter because there's the double protect. Xerneas goes down to Leech Seed, and with that, Garchompro should be taking game 2.
Yeah, he, despite the burn on Celesteela, that Pokemon is and how tough it is for this core of X-Ray to damage it, bring is Incineroar.
Yes, and this will be game 3 now. We've seen Mike D'Angelo take game 1, Garchompro take game 2. Now it's really, how do they want to play that? Both players played extraordinarily well both games, and I'd really like to see how they try to play around the strategies that they've used already. We saw how important Celesteela was to Garchompro in game 2. Does that mean that Mike D'Angelo brings in Incineroar this time to threaten it a bit more instead of the Xerneas? He could do that. Does he go for the Crobat or the Lopunny to get a little more offensive pressure out in the beginning of the game while saving his restricteds in the back? Garchompro could do that. It really depends on how they think their opponent is going to play, and I'm really interested to see how they lead in this.
Right. Yeah. In game 1, we saw Mike play a little more aggressively, and in game 2, we saw him play a little more passively, setting up light screen early on, and Pro managed to a lot better just because he had the Celesteela that can tank attacks. So if I'm Mike, I'd like to see Mike play a little more aggressively. A Pro that potentially that has the more aggressive lead this game, leading Lopunny, which we have not seen yet.
Yes, and that Lopunny is a little bulkier right now in its non-mega form, just being normal type. Can't get one-shotted by Dazzling Gleam from the Tapu Koko. But once it does mega, it gains that fighting type. It does a lot of damage with that, and has the scrappy ability. Not super helpful, but it will start having the speed and the fake to threaten Mike D'Angelo's team.
And very specifically, it will outspeed Tapu Koko, assuming it is a max speed Lopunny, which is a big deal because otherwise he has nothing on the team that can outspeed the Tapu Koko.
Yes, and if it's outspeeding Tapu Koko, that also means it's outspeeding Rayquaza. So even if he doesn't tail, just if it's max speed Lopunny, that puts a lot of pressure on Mike D'Angelo. Not be able to deal with this Lopunny. If he just tailwinds and goes for an Icy Wind, it's still going to be outspeeding, and that's the kind of that Mike D'Angelo probably did not want to face in this game.
Yeah, definitely. And so both players think their options does exert a ton of pressure on the Lopunny. If Lopunny doesn't fake it out, does have that Varium, and we do see the fake out going into the Tapu Koko, and the tailwind from Lunala getting the speed control while Tapu Fini getting the light screen and slowing down the game a little bit.
The key thing here, also with bringing Lopunny, unlike the past 2 games, is that Lopunny is not a special attacker, which means that light screen isn't going to affect it as much as it will affect that Lunala. That means it's pretty much free to start attacking things here without being really by that light screen. As we see the Encore into Tapu Fini, preventing it from using any more moves that is just locked into light screen now.
Right, and so essentially forcing the Tapu Fini to switch out or not do anything for the next couple turns. And of course, Tapu Koko with Protect is also very vulnerable to the Encore now as well.
I mean, even if he doesn't Protect, tries to go for a switch to prevent that Encore, it's really just a free turn for Garchompro, whether he wants to go for the Encore or just Tapu Fini can't do anything. Tapu Koko, even if it does try to attack or something, it's not going to be able to take a Moongeist Beam or a Return from either of those Pokemon on Garchompro's side of the field. This is a really fantastic position that he's put himself.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see if Mike adapted from game 2 and brought potentially an Incineroar to stop the Lopunny from doing quite as much damage, or Celesteela, which will take the normal type of attack that Lopunny want to throw out onto the Fini and the Koko, the X-Ray core in the back, which might not be able to deal with Lopunny very well.
Okay, we see the Rayquaza come in, so that does confirm that he can't have both Celesteela and Incineroar as return. No, frustration. My bad. Effectively the same. Come into the Rayquaza slot, dealing roughly 55% of damage as Moongeist Beam takes the knockout on the Tapu Koko. If Garchompro brought Celesteela again, it's not really being threatened at all anymore, unless Mike did bring that Incineroar in the back. And we see the Xerneas, which means he does not have that. Celesteela looks like he's sitting real pretty if that's one of those last two slots on guard.
Yeah. So, and I'm not sure if Mike has the offensive firepower to power through the Celesteela anymore. A little that Xerneas did to it. It seemed like a very specially bulky Celesteela. And on top of that, Lopunny threatens Encore on both these Pokemon if he does try to stall out this Tailwind.
Indeed. And even Xerneas almost just wants to attack into that Lopunny with the fighting type. Dazzling Gleam or Moonblast are going to do a lot of damage. So I wouldn't be surprised if Garchompro does crack down and try to take out that Xerneas sooner than later to prevent losing his Lopunny this early.
Yeah, and so players taken their time to make the decision, and with two full health Pokemon, revealed the two Pokemon in the back that he hasn't taken any damage this entire game. So yeah, this looks like a very dominating position for him. And Mike decides to bring in the Tapu Fini, takes a frustration and takes about 40%, and Xerneas gets a chance to set up its Geomancy, taking the Moongeist Beam through Light Screen very well.
Yep. And this is definitely a problem for Garchompro. Even though he did get some good damage onto that Tapu Fini, frustration did about 40%. That does mean it's a little bit of a bulkier Tapu Fini. Not that it is doing too much damage anyway. But here, even if he protects Lopunny and tries to get up Tailwind, he's going to be taking either a Gleam or a Moonblast plus Prompt, making that Lunala not in a very good position against this Xerneas here.
Right, and I don't think we've seen Protect on Lopunny. If it has Protect, that means it doesn't have a Fighting type coverage move. Instead, we just see it switch out, trying to conserve it for later. The Fake Out might be very important for Garchompro. Going right into that now Kyogre slot, doing about 75%. And while Lunala sets up Tailwind, Tapu Fini does hit his Nature's Madness this time around, bringing Lunala down to about half health and breaking its Shadow Shield.
Yep. I mean, this is definitely a great spot for Mike. I mean, assuming it is max speed Xerneas, even though Garchompro did get up to Mike D'Angelo's Xerneas is Geomancy, which means it does have that 2x speed modifier, the same thing as the Tailwind. So Dazzling Gleam is able to KO both. Would we see a Wide Guard here from the Lunala? Or does he just go for the Moonblast and try to get up another Light Screen to protect his Xerneas and his Rayquaza in the rest of the game?
And I think the key for Garchompro is does Celesteela have enough to take this game? Because Celesteela is he has to Xerneas. And a Wide Guard protecting Garchompro from the Icy Wind. Tailwind Lunala does outspeed. It's very likely to outspeed the Xerneas, and we don't know what the dynamic is between the Kyogre and Xerneas' speed tiers either.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely an interesting spot. It's about the exact same one we were in. Does Xerneas want to try to catch the Lunala on a D-Gleam and just go for the Moonblast? Does D-Gleam anyway, but we do see Lunala go before the Xerneas and the Kyogre, although it double misses Origin Pulse. That's got as Tapu Fini gets a light.
Right, and for what it's worth, the Origin Pulse would have put Fini into berry range. But let's see. Do we know how much damage Heavy Slam does to Xerneas? Because it's right around the range where I expect it to.
Hold on, I'll look last game. Heavy Slam did about 27-28%, and that was burn, so that's half damage. This might not be enough to pick up the KO, but it very well could be.
And that Origin Pulse miss might be the difference in that case if this heavy slam.
Yeah. I mean, this definitely could be a turn where Mike just doubles the Celesteela, and if Lunala, even if it just like switches into the Lopunny this with a protect from Celesteela, that gives Garchompro the fake out pressure he needs to be able to get off attacks. Not necessarily for free, with there still being two Pokemon on the field, but getting off a good amount of damage with less consequences.
Right, and Tapu Fini still pressuring the Celesteela with Nature's Madness. Xerneas is likely to do a little less than half health with the Moonblast. We saw how much Flamethrower did, but I'm forgetting how much Flamethrower did. And we do see the Nature's Madness go into the Celesteela.
Yep.
Little over half health after Leftovers recovery.
Yep. I mean, what we see now is that Xerneas isn't a very good spot. It can just Moonblast that Lunala slot. There's no Tailwind anymore, and it's up to Celesteela and Lopunny to clean up. I mean, he can't really not KO Lunala in this situation, because then Lopunny gets in with the Tailwind and gets to start laying down damage. This is definitely a bad spot for Garchompro, just having that Geo Xerneas on the other.
I think it really depends on how much damage Heavy Slam does, because if Heavy Slam can pick up Xerneas from here, actually not in a bad situation at all. The frustration should KO Rayquaza from this range. I'm not sure if Mike is going to have a chance to bring in his Rayquaza for free and pressure the Celesteela.
I forgot that it took that frustration earlier in the game, and we did see that do a little over half. So this should be able to pick it up. He gets up the Tailwind with the double into the Celesteela this turn. It means that Garchompro can go for a Heavy Slam again, but Lunala also gets to deal a bit more damage to that Tapu before it eventually dies.
Right, and now that in this situation now, the Scald will not go before the to protect. We do see the Moongas Beam go into the. We see Nature's Madness, which very likely puts the Celesteela into Moonblast range.
That is definitely Moonblast range, and if it's not Moonblast range, that is range for a Flamethrower from Rayquaza.
Right.
A very scary spot for Garchompro here. Celesteela, his win con is getting dangerously low, and at this point he needs some Protect Stall and Fake Outs to get him back into a spot where Celesteela isn't at risk of dying immediately.
I would have liked to have seen him read into that Protect and Heavy Slam and switch in his Lopunny. Right now, I'm not sure if Garchompro can keep his Celesteela on the field for long enough to deal with all of these threats that are left.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I mean, even if he didn't Heavy Slam the Xerneas slot, reading the Protect, and just even keeping Lunala in, but hit the Tapu, he would be in a much better spot with the Rayquaza being low health and Celesteela, where he can start dealing with those threats. But now that he kind of can't really do all of those with the little bit of life Celesteela has left, this does look like the game is nearing.
It's still an interesting position because Mike can't really freely go for Dazzling Gleam because of the potential wide guard, and Celesteela does have the potential to go for Protect, have another way to bring in his Lopunny potentially for free here. There's still some mind games going on, and I don't think this game is quite over yet. I think there's still at least a couple turns of Pokemon to be played.
Let's see how this turn plays out. Both players taking an extremely long time. They definitely don't want to mess this.
I think that this might be the last chance to safely bring in his Lopunny. He needs the Tailwind so that Xerneas threaten to go for Protect, and we do in fact see the Lopunny come in Moonblast, and we see an Icy Wind that misses the Lopunny.
This is huge. I mean, even though you can just Protect, stall out the Tailwind, Mike D'Angelo does now have to deal with that Lopunny and the Celesteela. Moonblast could pick up the KO on Lopunny, but that would leave Celesteela attacking for free. And Tapu Fini probably can't do too much to Lopunny with Skull.
It also
So
it also potentially gives Celesteela a way to recover more health with Leech Seed now that it knows that Xerneas can't attack it directly. You can go directly for an attack into Tapu Fini and try to get the special defense boost that it needs to take another attack from Xerneas and Rayquaza.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to see the even if it's not a fake out, just the frustration into the Xerneas picking up even if it's a switch. Maybe I don't know. Just kind of get Rayquaza with keeping Tapu Fini on the field and going for another Scald, getting up with Light Screen. Realistically, I'm not really sure what Tapu Fini does anymore besides Icy Wind. Does Celesteela have Wide Guard? Does he Wide Guard try to predict the Gleam and the Icy Wind and hit the Xerneas? This is definitely one of those turns where you need to predict right, and predicting wrong is very detrimental.
Right. Yeah. So this is definitely still a very Pokemon. We see Garchompro switch out the Lopunny, keeping it safe, and get the Leech Seed off onto Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini does get the critical hit with Scald. However, Celesteela now has the ability to recover a little more health on Tapu Fini.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see a double protect here, trying to get as much Leech Seed and leftovers health recovery as possible before it has to start taking hits. But if he does do that, that also leaves Mike for an attack in the next turn with little to no consequences of attacking into protect unless Garchompro goes for the Tapu Fini Leech. If he does read the double protect, trying to do that, switching Rayquaza here would be a very good play. We see the protect on Lunala and then the protect on Celesteela, but no switch from giving that Celesteela more life recovery with the Leech Seed and the leftovers, getting it back to roughly 50%.
And roughly the range where we believe that it can take a Moonblast from. While Xerneas pressures the other side of the field and does just pick up this KO on the Lunala, we do see go into the Xerneas, and we do see it pick it up. And of course, it gets the Leech Seed recovery to KO Fini, putting Garchompro in a very strong position now.
Yep, I mean Lopunny does outspeed that Rayquaza, even if it does Mega Evolve. So it does look that Garchompro managed to turn this originally bad position into one that is in his favor, as we see the fake out and the not KOing Rayquaza, surprisingly, but it should be enough to take it out next turn.
And we see the E-Speed do less than half to Lopunny, and Garchompro takes down Mike D'Angelo and earns his spot in the Invitational.
Yeah, I mean, outstanding play from both of them. I mean, I thought it was over before it really was, and they managed to turn it around. I mean, this just goes to show how much these players thought through their plays. And we will be very soon with another top 8 set.